Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Grants Subcommittee. Now, you have to forgive me, I've only done one of these in my 10 years on council. This is the second time I've chaired a committee meeting, so it is like a rather old babe in the wood. So I think we just start with the karakia, do we? And then we do the apologies. So I've asked Councillor Foon to do the karakia because her te reo is 1,000% better than mine.
Big honour, yeah. Do join in, colleagues, if you like. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai, e hi ake ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei Māori ora.
Go, Tim.
Right, so first of all, do I move the apologies before I say the apologies? Oh, so we have apologies from Councillor Wanera, who is in training camp up at Trentham, in case things get worse around the world. And apologies from the Mayor for being late, but guess what? Not needed, thank you. So I move the motion that we accept the apologies. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Matthews. So I now put the motion. It's been moved and seconded, so could you please vote? I'm sure it is carried. It's carried, right, unanimously. A conflict of interest declaration. So you'll just sit back for that. It's just one. Is it just one? So it's classic on Cuba and
Creative Capital Arts Trust.
Oh yes, okay. So what does he just sit back for that?
To check with him. Sorry, what's the process?
Just, he shouldn't have to sit out the whole thing.
For a conflict of interest, yeah, so we'll take the vote on those particular applications separately.
Good.
And if there's any debate, then Tim or Councillor Brown won't take part in it.
Right, that's great. Thank you very much. So I'd call on any members to declare a conflict of interest. Councillor Brown has declared one. We don't have to vote on that, do we? No, good. Confirmation of the minutes. I move the motion that we approve the minutes of the Pītau Pūmanawa Grants Subcommittee meeting held on May 24, 2023, having been circulated, and that they're taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of the meeting. Do I have a seconder? Councillor O'Neill, thank you. If you'd all like to vote. I now put the motion. It's been moved and seconded. Oh, sorry, wrong button. This one.
Taxi.
Right, so I declare the motion carried. So I think I don't like this items not on the agenda. I say all items are on the agenda, I believe. So now we have public participation. So first up. Oh, here, thank you, sorry. So first of all, I'd like to welcome Kate Walmsley, if Kate is here, thank you. Kate is from Kai Cycle Incorporated. So you have 10 minutes? 10 minutes. If you could leave some of that time for questions, that would be helpful for everyone. Kate, thank you.
Sure. Tēnā koutou. Can you all hear me okay? Great, lovely, thank you. Firstly, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak at this subcommittee meeting. My name's Kate Walmsley. I'm part of Kai Cycle, which is a non-profit urban farming, localised composting and community education organisation based in Newtown. We've presented here a few times, so apologies for boring you. So I'm speaking to support our funding application to the Climate and Sustainability Fund. The funding we asked for is to help get our new composting facility in Rongotai up and running. So our composting arm started back in 2015 with people collecting food scraps from their neighbours in their bike baskets, and we now divert 40 tonnes of food scraps from landfill, most likely each year, and recycle it into great compost. We employ a full-timer and 6 part-timers. Kai Cycle also has the urban farming and community arms, which use this compost to generate a wide range of positive outcomes: nutritious kai, local skill building, supporting mental wellbeing, reducing food supply chain emissions, and many more. We were for many years trying to figure out how to take the next step up in scale with our composting mahi. We've pursued different options, worked hard and had to be creative. Our big break came when we were awarded $55,000 from the Wellington City Council Organics Diversion Fund last year, which we are really grateful for. Having the ability to apply for these large sums of money is really transformative for organisations like us. This meant that we could rent a commercial premise for the first time, the last piece of the puzzle for establishing a larger scale composting facility. This facility will add 75 tonnes of composting capacity per year, so 60 more tonnes of food scraps, which can emit up to 420 tonnes of CO2 equivalent in a landfill. By collecting food scraps on bikes, we reduce end-of-life emissions from food waste while also supporting the development of a lower carbon local food system. This facility will cater for the food waste collection service that we currently provide to our customers, such as the Law Commission, Creative New Zealand and Martin Jenkins. We have about 70 business customers on the books currently, and it will enable us to serve 200 business customers in the Wellington CBD. We've run into a lot of challenges and unexpected costs with getting this facility up and running. Levelling up to the small commercial scale has been a massive learning curve for us. We're still a small community-focused nonprofit, and there are many aspects of the commercial and bureaucratic world that make things very difficult for groups like us. One of these things was building consent, massive learning curve. Turns out with a few minor building modifications, we did need to go through a consent process, which together with our subtenant in our space has ended up costing us Kai-Cycle, over $10,000 and taking much of this year. So while also paying commercial rent, while also losing revenue. So a lot of unexpected costs are big hits to groups like us. But we have learned a lot, and we see a need for better information and guidance for local businesses, small businesses and nonprofits looking to get into commercial property and take that next step up in scale and impact. So we do hope to share our learnings so that similar groups can avoid going through that kind of process. I do want to stress that the funding we've applied for here is moving forward from here. $45,000 will go a really long way toward getting us up and running at last. So to finish setting up our operation, to getting our compost product made, because we'll be looking to sell half and donate half, continuing to donate to local community food growing projects. We're 100% committed to making this work and financially sustainable, which we hope to demonstrate in the coming financial year through our composting service subscription fees and compost sales. As I just mentioned, we'll continue to donate a large portion of the compost we produce from the site to local marakai and community food growing projects, including gardening to table schools, marae and other community gardens on council land. This is really what it's all about, turning this waste stream that creates harm in landfill into a quality resource that helps embed food resilience and security in our city. Our project is really well aligned with Council's Food System Action Plan, our city's food future, as well as its zero waste strategy and economic wellbeing strategy. This project aims to prove a new urban model for addressing food waste that could be replicated around Wellington City as part of our future organics plan. So we're really excited to get this new composting operation up and running, and we would love to invite our city councillors and officers to come and visit it once it is. We're hoping to do a launch party this summer. So thank you very much for your time. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou.
Kia ora, Kate. Thank you for your mahi and optimism on what you can achieve with 200 businesses being on your books. It's pretty awesome. I just want to understand a little bit about the resource consent process, because this is a new project for the city to consent, I'm assuming. So were you aware of how long it was going to take? How long has it taken you? And I guess the main question is, if we want to scale up, what would this mean for if you were to, or if people were wanting to have similar systems posted around the city?
Tēnā koe, Laurie. We didn't need resource consent. We went through the kind of the formal pre-application process and got advised that we wouldn't need resource consent as it was permitted activity given the zoning we're in. And we did need building consent, which was, putting an external hole in the outside of the building and putting up a partition wall. Got a bit complicated by the fact we were moving through this process with a subtenant who were putting in a small commercial kitchen. So we combined the process to try and make it more affordable, but it, did mean it took a bit longer for us because their stuff was more complicated. So, I think the building consent process, it's just quite hard to know what you don't know. And to start with, tried to get some advice as much as we could from council officers, and it still felt a bit vague. We started then working with or talking to a bunch of different agents. It was also a little bit confusing if we would need or wouldn't need building consent. We first tried going for an exemption based on the minor nature of our works, which took quite a few months and quite a bit of money to prepare, and then got told that we would need building consent, so then went through that longer and more costly process. But it's just been quite confusing for us. I guess nonprofits like us, we don't want to go out and hire an architect that's going to cost us a couple $1,000s if we don't, it doesn't seem like we need that. So I guess, looking at building consent from the outside for us, not knowing and not having done it before, it looked like it would be like about a month-long process with small fees, but it ended up costing a lot more and taking a lot more time than we thought. So again, a learning curve for us. We're really keen to, do what we can to support other groups to skip some of those steps and costs. Yeah.
Councillor Brown.
I think it's a great project, and I'm looking forward to being invited to have a look at it. So I think this is fabulous. But I've just got one question, which is, I see that you've received $55,000 from the council's waste minimisation funding. So why didn't the funding come through that mechanism rather than grants? I totally support the funding, but I don't understand why it's coming through this particular channel as opposed to the other channel.
I did approach council and was recommended that this would be the best place to apply for funding. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Sure. Oh, later. Kate, thank you very much. Thank you for coming in and taking the time and teaching us a little bit about the complexities of composting, which I have not yet mastered, but I'm working on it.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, that'd be really good.
Excellent, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor.
So now, is Lucy Pink here? Oh, online. So, Lucy, thank you, welcome. So I'd just like to alert all councillors to make sure they use microphones at the appropriate time. Lucy, so you've come to us from Sustainability Sidekick? And we can't hear you. It's a technical issue this end. I think we can hear you now.
Hi.
Oh, good, thank you. Lucy, welcome. Lucy Pink from Sustainability Sidekick, 10 minutes. And you've got a slideshow. And who's running the slideshow? We are or she is? We are, okay. Over to you.
Kia ora, I'm Lucy. So I'm from Contented. We are an AI software startup based in Christchurch. So we're speaking about our funding application for the Climate Fund. So I'll say next slide. Thank you. So we build bespoke AI tools for businesses of all sizes, including the Chamber of Commerce, Lee's Construction, a group of independent employment lawyers in Wellington, all the way to smaller businesses like mortgage brokers. But we are really passionate about building AI tools, not just for the buzz, but actually for the reason that it's amazing. It's because they can have huge impacts towards the welfare and productivity of teams and companies in New Zealand. New Zealand has some of the most serious burnout and mental health issues in the world, along with the lowest productivity levels in the OECD. So our mission is primarily around using AI to help with this. We find that AI is predominantly kind of used in more of the larger businesses, and AI is actually something that needs to be used within the smaller businesses in the hands that need them. And so our mission is primarily around using AI and giving businesses access to the life-changing technology that it is. Next slide. So this is a project that we discussed in our application supporting our application. This is a tool that we built for nurse practitioners at the University of Auckland. So usually educators in this space spend around 4 to 5 hours writing these detailed case studies to help their students learn and understand patient diagnoses. And often these sort of nurse practitioners would just rely on existing case studies, and they wouldn't actually update these stories because they just took too long, meaning that a lot of students were missing out on better education, and especially as we're kind of got a low doctor shortage, nurse practitioners, and well equipping these students is more imperative than ever. So we build not just kind of business savvy tools, but we really love to build AI tools that have a huge impact on where we see New Zealand going. Next slide. So we are from sustainability backgrounds, so we're a team of 6. I started my entrepreneurship journey building tools, tech tools to help us understand the social impacts of our products. This is when I had a startup called On You. So basically it was to help people understand whether their products were ethically made or not. So I combined sustainability data with products online so that people could actually see where they were from, who made them, what factory, the types of auditing that was happening there. And we try to spend as much time in the sustainability space as possible because we believe that AI isn't just for an economic benefit, but actually should be used for an environmental and social benefit. We recently had the opportunity to speak at Pītau for Earth Week around AI and sustainability. So when we saw the Wellington Council was looking for proposals for the fund, we thought this would be a really great way for us to use our tech acumen for good, especially with the council that's been actively spearheading this movement. So next slide. I'll spend more time on. So we didn't want to just create an AI chatbot. We see a lot of companies jumping onto this space. We would love to build an AI tool that actually can have actionable change with a meaningful link to Wellington's kind of major emission sources. So I can kind of probably just wary of time and probably give more time for questions and answers. But we can see a lot of ways that AI could help with businesses actioning more environmental initiatives or becoming more sustainable. So for example, if we look at the event planning, essentially we can, instead of AI just going and using the abyss of information, we can use Wellington City Council or a sustainability group's own sort of data around events. So there's an amazing sustainable event startup here in Christchurch called RAD, and they've got lots of documentation around what a sustainable event is. So we can use AI to plug into that content as the sort of background of the tool, and how a small business or a business could use this tool would be they could put in inputs of an event that they're planning. So let's say it was just a midwinter, Christmas staff party, all the way to a sports day for any kind of size of business. They would add in event details, and the outputs could be this is a project plan for how to make that event more sustainable, which is all in line with the Wellington's sort of activities that would have the biggest impact on Wellington's kind of contribution to climate change. So I think it could be around, making sure that you've got the correct bins in the right spaces, and we can make these sort of outputs really confined. So the AI is really impactful in that sense. And there's lots of other sort of ideas for tools around this, especially around like performance reporting. So this could be a case of a business surveying their team around how they think the company could be more environmental or more sustainable. And then our tool can turn these survey data and insights into an action plan for that business. So there are really cool ways of doing this. And arguably speaking, we could concentrate on just one, but we've got some cool ideas of how this could work. And yeah, I should stop there just so I can.
Okay,
I can do.
So I've got a few questions. Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora, Lucy. Thank you. I'm just interested in hearing any of your thoughts about the advantages and or risks of using AI for this kind of work as opposed to more traditional methods of people getting information.
There's definitely risks with AI, but the way that we mitigate this is by connecting to a really sort of safeguarded piece of content. So, for example, if we're doing the sustainability event tool, a lot of the issues that we've seen in the past, especially in the last couple of months, is using AI for research or using it for, I think we saw some lawyers using it for case study research, and that was a big headline. And that was because they were asking the AI to go into its own abyss of content and come up with these miraculous case studies that were non-existent in the first place. So how we combat that is we just give it a very small pool of data to kind of draw from. And I think what's really cool is that it's that combination of personalized sort of training or education. It's taking the company's existing, details and actually making a plan for them, as opposed for them to actually be reading, content that might not be applicable for them.
Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, did you have a question? Councillor O'Neill, anyone? Councillor Brown has a question.
It sounds like you've got rather a fabulous product, but I don't quite understand why Wellington City Council would provide a grant for it. Why, if it is a commercial product you're offering businesses, what's our role?
It's probably not more of a commercial benefit. It would more be around the Wellington City Council giving businesses access to a tool that can enable better sustainable practices. Often, we wouldn't often sell this tool. It's kind of a tool that we think that should be given to businesses or be available to businesses to use, because it is, sustainability kind of often comes at I think people don't want to be investing, or businesses don't want to be spending money in sustainable causes, especially during this time of economic sort of social, cost of living, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think it's good for a tool like this to be funded so businesses can access this, especially the smaller ones.
I understand that point. Thank you for that. But so why isn't central government doing it so that all businesses around New Zealand? Why would Wellington City Council do it specifically for our businesses, given that presumably your product has got wide applicability?
Good question. I feel like we haven't really thought about it being a central government sort of tool. I thought, it's Wellington Council has been a council that has kind of spearheaded a lot of sustainability projects like this. So we thought it could be cool for the Wellington Council to get on board something like this and pave the way for AI and sustainability. That was our sort of reason for applying.
Are there any further questions? No. Lucy, thank you very much. Thank you for zooming in, and we'll be debating this later on. But I appreciate your attendance via Zoom. Thank you.
No, thanks, guys. Bye.
So the next one, but I did forget to tell you that morning tea will be served at 10:30. So just so you know that, I forgot to tell you. Now, the next participants are Raywin and Pauline from, is it Ikirau? Ikirau Recycle HQ. Welcome. Oh, that doesn't help. With me.
Thank you. We're here to talk about the climate funding application for Strathmore Community.
Could I just ask you to speak a little closer to the microphone, or even come down to the table?
It's a bit nicer for the. Here you go.
Oh, yes. Just push.
So you have 10 minutes. It would be good if you could allow some of that time for questions. Thank you.
I'm here to talk about the climate funding application for Strathmore Community Centre project. Ngā mihi mahana mea. Whānau me ngā tangata o te tari koromua atua e hui hui mai nei. Ko Pauline Johnson tōku ingo, ko au he kauimanaki o te hu ngā rau. We see our application as a continuation of the journey we have begun. Ko tahi tangata, building on our connections with one another and across our community, providing for kai and kōrero. Aroha ki te tangata, knowing and caring about the many whānau who make up our community by providing and sharing kai, providing opportunities to learn new skills and sharing knowledge. Manaaki whenua, many of us are connected to the whenua and understand the importance of sustainability. Building on this understanding is important for us and the next generation. Manaaki kaumātua, we value the support of kuia, karaua, taua, paua within our hapuri. Their wisdom, knowledge and guidance ensure that we maintain our eye on huarahi. If we are successful with this funding application, it will undoubtedly have an enabling impact on whānau engagement and well-being, build trusting relationships, sharing knowledge in and across our hapori community. For us, at the end of the day, it is our people in our community. He ahaha te mea nui o tēnei ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata. Thank you.
So, so thank you for that. So,
For 3 days.
do either of your colleagues want to speak as well, or do you want to open it up to questions? Okay, questions. Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, thanks for coming in. I'm a councillor that represents the Strathmore area. I was just wondering if you've got any experiences previously with this kind of work, any stories about the success of these projects?
Bringing the community together. So I can.
No, could you use the microphone, please?
Sure. And we do. Thank you. Oh, there we go. Okay, so all of our events and activities will look very similar to this. Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Kia ora. Can I just say that while these projects and programs are very familiar to us, one of the things that's really unique in our community is the way that we bring our senior community together, our kuia, kaumātua, koro, taua, paua, who are part of not only being volunteers, but are part of the infrastructure of Strathmore Te Tūngarau. So they're part of the key oversight group, if you like, and they also they have everyday functions, and they draw in the stories from people who need assistance. So we see this as being mana ki tangata, he aroha ki te tangata, caring for people in need, but also caring for ourselves as a group of senior people. Kia ora.
Now, any more questions? Councillor Matthews, on a roll.
Kia ora, and thank you so much, Pauline, for your korero. I really appreciate it, and I'm sorry if you felt nervous, but we're really happy to see you. I guess wanted to hear what was your connection to getting involved in this work? Why is it something important for you to want to come to council and come and talk with us about, other than someone asked you, I guess?
I've been involved at the Strathmore Community Centre for over a year now, and I just wanted to get into it to help people out and I actually went there for help myself. So I've used the community centre for my self-help. Counselling help that they had there was good for me and my daughter. I'm a single mother. They helped me out a lot, not just with my mind, but with myself, building my strength up inside myself. And now I help out as a volunteer and as kaimanaki there, and yeah, just gave me strength, and the people there are awesome. We all come together as one group. We have 2 community centres in Strathmore, and we share both community centres. We work together as one group. Yeah. For me, it was just the connection I had with the other people there.
That's wonderful. Thank you. That's great.
So thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Foon?
Kia ora, ina haere mai. So great that you came in today. Really, really cool for us, because we'd like to get out everywhere else, but it's sometimes not possible. So it's a really good way for us to hear and experience what's going on in your community. So with this project, what is it that I guess, there's a definite, but what are the opportunities you can see happening through this project being funded?
Sharing our knowledge with our community, because it's a wide community of different cultures, just and learning from their community, from their cultures, what they can help us with, so like providing food, helping to growing food, showing them how to grow food, they showing us their side, like the different ethnic groups and that.
I think Pauline's underselling herself and all the amazing work that she does in Strathmore. So I was there during the initial conversation around this idea and this concept, and Pauline was one of the people that really led the conversation about how there's this knowledge that exists in the community, and maybe it can exist in an individual or in a group or in a whānau, but it's not shared widely, and there are so many children and teenagers and just people in the community that would like to have access to this information. And so Pauline and a whole group of other volunteers sat and talked about like how could we, what kind of project could we put together that would allow for this knowledge to be transferred through the generations. And this is what they came up with. And it's there's so much excitement in Strathmore about the possibility of doing this. Pauline's bringing some of it here to you today, but let me tell you, there are many, many people behind her also that are very excited about the possibility of doing this work. So, yes, we can bring them next time if you like.
So thank you. Any further questions? No. So thank you for coming in. Thank you for overcoming your nervousness. A stellar performance, and we look forward to seeing you again when you'll be even more polished. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
So now I'd like to welcome Nick Johnston. Nick, do you want to stand at the rostrum or do you want to sit at the table? That's what we like to hear. Well, you choose.
Yeah.
So Nick, you have 10 minutes. It would be good if you could speak for a shorter period of time than that so we can ask you questions.
Sure.
Over to you.
My name's Nick Johnston. I'm one of the committee members of Ghost Diving New Zealand. I just really wanted to take the opportunity to show up and thank you guys for your support and the ongoing commitment that WCC has to us to help us do what we do. I'd like to think that everybody knows who we are and what we do. Do I need to go into that? Yes, please. Cool. So what we do is we have a series of volunteers, mostly divers, scuba divers, free divers, shore crew, and we go around and we pull as much rubbish out of the ocean as we can. So we run events usually about every 6 weeks, but then we have sort of little events every probably 2 weeks. One of us is out there doing something. We went and pulled a half dozen scooters out of the dive platform on Saturday while looking for a guy's... Yeah, well, it started with a guy's wedding ring. He dropped his wedding ring and it fell through the slats underneath the dive platform, so he asked us to go and look for that. So we tried to find that, couldn't find it, so we grabbed some scooters while we were there. So we're up to 121 e-scooters that we've pulled out of the harbour since we started counting, and we haven't been counting tonnage for a while, but it's a significant amount of rubbish that we drag out on most of our events. The next really big one being the 4th of November, which is the Frank Kitts one, and that's usually somewhere between 5, 6 to 10 tonnes of rubbish that we can pull in a couple of hours. It's quite scary what's underneath the water. People just don't see it. So yeah, that's our plan. It's just we're getting into some other waterways and streams. We're doing a stream cleanup in Karori, pulling all the rubbish out of that, anything marine, beaches, whatever we can get involved in.
Great. Well, you do fantastic work, and it is always horrifying how much stuff you manage to find. So I'm just going to ask my colleagues who has a question. Councillor O'Neill.
Kia ora, Nick. I've been to a few cleanups. I just wondered if you could shed any light on kind of the community building that goes around when we host a day like this out in the suburbs, or speak to kind of different people that come along and learn a lot of things.
Yep, so we try to engage as many of the extra people as we can. We are getting bigger and more recognised as the media attention grows and public interaction grows. We've managed to rope in a couple of marine biologists. So we now have little aquariums at the events, so if we find an animal inside something, we can put it in the container. Brings in the kids, they like to look at the little animals, and we can talk to the parents about what we do. One of the last events we did at Greta Point about 2 months ago, I think we had something like 30 children turn up and stick their little high visors on and go around picking up rubbish, and that was really cool to see.
So any other questions? So I have a question for you. So when you rescue the e-scooters, I'm assuming they're the commercial ones.
Yes.
Do you return them to the company, and do they pay you for it?
They don't. We're not allowed to receive any money from it. That means that we have to become like a professional salvage organisation, which we're not. But we do let them know that they're there. A lot of them aren't worth recovering. They've been under the bottom of the sea for months and they're encrusted in goo, animals and things. But we pull them out, we let them know they're there. Sometimes they pick them up, sometimes they don't. And they generally send us coordinates so we know where a lot of them are, so we can go and pull them out.
Extraordinary. And so one totally different question. Do you wear scuba diving gear or wetsuits?
Some guys do. I'm a kayaker. So I meet the divers, they find stuff, put it in bags, bring it up to the surface, I transport it to the shore on my kayak.
Okay.
And distribute gear, communicate with divers, just try and keep everything flowing.
Great, amazing. Thank you. So any questions? No? Councillor Foon?
Thanks, Nick. If you can take back to your team, really great to hear what you're doing, and we're really proud to support. Just wanted to question about, do you have, and I know it's all time, but do you cross over with any other groups? I guess I'm seeing Mountains to Sea as an opportunity.
We have dealt with Mountains to Sea before. I have heard the name, but I'm not sure what exactly we do.
Yeah.
Like we've got there's another one called Sustainable Coastlines that we talk to. We work with Wayne from Keep New Zealand Beautiful.
Yep. Great.
He's out in the Hutt Valley. There's a few little crews like the Petone Beach cleanup crew and things like that. We all know each other and some cooperate, some don't.
Yes.
But whatever we can.
Great. Yeah. Just more that, just power in that crossover point, if possible.
Yeah.
When possible.
We find that they turn up to our events and we turn up to their events and everybody tries to work together.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. You do fantastic work.
Thank you.
And I'm very grateful to and continue to be horrified that people drop litter and drop stuff into the sea. But I grew up with the generation of being tidy Kiwis, and it seems to have gone by the wayside. Anyway, thank you very much, Nick. Really appreciate your coming in.
Thank you for your time.
So now we're going to move to the Arts and Culture Fund, which I'm going to introduce. And I just first of all like to thank the officers for their help. Mark Farrer, who's been an unbelievable help ever since I first came onto council, and Grace Houghty, I think that's right, and Yvonne Mackey, thank you very much. So just to note that the multi-year funding grants have been put on they're all in sync together so that they're not coming up. That's right, they're not coming up this year, but they're in your papers if you want to see what they are. So today we are deciding on short-term projects, and it's the first of 3 funding rounds for the 2023-24 financial year. The fund has $602,733 for the whole year, and today we are allocating $243,287, split between 3 parts of the fund. So we have 61 applications asking for $593,702. Clearly, they are not all going to get what they ask for. And that's an increase in applications, 61 this year, 43 last time round. And this round has 14 applications related to music, 9 for theatre, 7 film-based, and the rest are a mixture of all sorts of different disciplines. So there are a couple of grants that I would like to highlight, which I thought were particularly good. The first one is the $15,000 grant recommended for the Māori Literature Trust Board for the 2023 Pikihuia Awards. So as a little bit of a background, as a very young cadet journalist in the 1970s, I managed to get the first media interview with Witi Ihimaera. We were both terrified. He'd never been interviewed before, and I hadn't done many interviews. So we had a really great interview where CAB now stands, which was then a park. I completely forgot that I was supposed to get a photograph. So we did the interview. I thought I've got it all covered. He walked down from the road and I suddenly panicked, had to go back and drag him up to the photographer's studio. He was the first Māori writer to publish a collection of short stories. That was Pūmanawa. And he was also the first to publish a novel, which was Tangi in 1973. And he said he became interested in becoming a writer when he was 15 and realised Māori didn't feature in the books he read. So I think this is a really fantastic thing to give a grant to. And I'd also like like to comment on the Classical on Cuba, which is a fantastic event. You know, Cuba Street is one of our livelier areas, but it's really transformed by this particular festival. I hope that you managed to attend some of the performances. I know Councillor Brown was beating the drum for it. So those are just two grants that I feel are particularly interesting. So where do I go from here? Let me just check my papers. Okay, officers introduce the recommendations. Thank you.
O tēnā tātou, e kui mai koruma i rei rangatira mā i ngā mātāwaka, ngā paimaunga, ngā waiawa o te motu tēnā tātou. Ko tēnei te ringa o te tangata e noho nei ki raro i te marumaru o Tararua Maunga, e rere te awa kairangi ki te whanganui atara, te kāinga o Taranaki whānui, te ati awa Ngāti Toa, koutou katoa. Kānui te mahi kia koutou, ma pango ma whero ma oti, ka oti te mahi ma tō raurau, ma tōku raurau, ka pūwai te iwi ara, ka pūwai te katoa. Nō reira tēnā tātou. Kia ora everybody, ko Andy Lo tōku ingoa. Great to be here with you. Thank you for having us here. We're very excited, Grace, Hoeti and I, to be presenting these today. It feels like since I started 18 months ago, the Ahotini movement is in force and starting to move at some pace. We've got a lot of work to do still with communicating and committing ourselves in terms of tangata whenua and mana whenua. Still, we're working in that space quite strongly, but huge progress has been made in terms of communities knowing what we're trying to do and knowing what council's doing and how committed we are to the arts within this city. So it's great to be presenting this paper to you today. Just going to hand it over to Grace Hoeti, who's going to talk about a few points as well. Kia ora.
Kia ora koutou, ko Grace Ahipene hoi te tēnei. I'm just very pleased with this round. There's been some solid applications come in, and it's a slightly higher spend, but that's quite normal on the first round for the financial year. But I'm going to leave it right there. You can see what the recommends are, and we're open to any questions you may have.
So thank you, Grace. Just one moment. I just want to check something with the officers. Just checking that I'm doing everything properly. Does anyone have any questions about any of them? So I know, Councillor Brown, you're recusing yourself from 1, 2. What's the other one? I've got.
It's the living wage one I think you're also looking at.
But that's a difference. Is that so? That's creative. Just tell me which one it is. You've got this one here, Creative Capital Arts Trust.
And then the living wage one.
Which is
that's later on, isn't it? Yeah, so it's just one in this section. Yep, okay. Right, question. Anyone got questions? Councillor Brown.
Are we providing enough? I mean, it strikes me that this particular sector is one that hasn't got the options in terms of funding that some of the other areas that we provide grants to. And so, given the critical need or importance of the culture for Wellington, I'm just worried that we're underfunding or we're not helping as much as we should. So I'd like your views about that.
Well, I'm biased, coming from an arts perspective.
We're definitely biased.
But yes, it would be lovely to be able to give more, but we know the expectation. We know that there's not much in the pool. But however, we're always open to other avenues where the arts are developing, and it's an endless long piece of string, to be honest. Of course, we would love to see more funds, absolutely, but and we are the creative capital. And ideally, it would be good to. But then we also know there are lots of other issues, especially around social developments in areas such as housing. But we understand certain aspects. So I'll leave that for you to decide.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Matthews, you always have questions. You're not letting us.
There's just such wonderful work, and I'm just happy to hear from you. So no questions.
So,
But they would like you to be someone to present at the Pikihuia Book Awards because they are the Wellington City Council, the English sections. 3 of the awards are named after us.
I like the book awards. I went to the Children and Young Persons Award ceremony where our team was praised, and it was so wonderful to represent the organisation. And yeah, this team, but also the libraries team. Yeah,
awesome. And the Māori Literature Trust would love for someone to present the awards on behalf of the council. They've been going for 15 years, and Robin Barge does an amazing job.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does anyone have any more questions before we move into debate? And Councillor Foon.
Just on the back of Councillor Brown's question, I guess you're at the interface of the community. So, just coming up to the long-term plan, I guess the question is how would you rate the pressure on the community at the moment? And I guess giving some kind of scale, but just how is the ability of the arts community to be able to deliver, because what we're hearing is hardship, but just what's the sense check you're getting out there for the community to deliver, to give us the capital, that creative capital title?
Well, the pressure's massive, and if we look at the infometrics from the numbers of creative people living in the city from 2020 to 2021, it's gone down 0.2%. It used to be 6.3% creative people working in the arts in the city, and it's now 6.1%. So that's because it's difficult for people to live in the city, and a lot of creatives have moved out and are moving out. So that's a metric, yep.
And the arts is one of the largest employers. It really is within the city itself, and it's a massive struggle. To be honest, if it was out of 10, we're in 11. And it's a major industry that needs support.
Oh, sorry, any more questions before we move into the debate? Is there a mover for the motion? Do I move it? Yeah, I'll move it. And then a seconder? Councillor Foon. Is there any debate? I think Councillor Brown's already really made his debate in form of a question.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, okay. Obviously yesterday we had a conversation about the town hall, and we're very aware of the amount of money which council is investing in infrastructure in the sort of arts associated space to basically provide stages. And when I went through what we're actually doing with the St James, the town hall, Te Whaia, Michael Fowler still to come, Opera House still to come, etc., etc. I mean, clearly we are. We're spending a huge amount of money on the infrastructure, but we've got to be very, very cognizant that the people who actually go on the stages are really in desperate straits. And a really small amount of money makes an enormous amount of difference. And just at last year's Fringe Festival, where council provided additional support for Hannah Playhouse to be activated, made just such an amazing difference to a theatre that basically has got almost no use, basically. And so I really think that we've got to make sure that this is regarded as a priority area, and where a small amount of money goes just an unbelievable distance. And if I'm allowed to speak about one of the next sections, but the the living wage funding is a really interesting initiative, which I think has come from Terry originally, but it's, sorry. I knew it was somebody on my, it was one of those pinkos on my right, but it's just unbelievable. I don't think people in this room would just quite realise how many hours for how little money people actually do sweat and slave in this space, and the ability for us to provide support for them. It does mean that they avoid the kind of mental traumas and all the rest of it, because a lot of these people are under stress. And just wearing my arts sort of sector hat this week, I was involved in a conversation about somebody who'd had a complete mental breakdown over classical on Cuba, as it happens, because of the stress that she was put under. And that's just because there's a finite amount of resources, and people are asked to basically do 24/7 to actually deliver these shows. So the support that Wellington City Council provides is critically important, but insufficient in this space. So,
Councillor Foon.
Kia ora, Councillor Brown. Well, I think what I would like to say is, as a council, we've committed that the arts community is a priority for our long-term plan, and maybe one of the ways we can look at that is to carry over. I understand the Living Wage Fund was only a 3-year period, so that is something we could look to continue, maybe with a different label if that suits. But I think agreed, and if we want to carry on and champion our creative city, but I think we're going to have to get more creative than just with funding, and enabling living quarters would be, a kind of a place for arts people to live would be a really key opportunity. Don't know how we're going to do that, but I'll plant that seed. But I also do want to say that the work we do in Ahotini needs to also be a priority for us, and that we need to make sure we're lifting that up and making sure we deliver on that as we go along. Kia ora.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak? Shall I do the right of reply, which is, I'm not going to do a right of reply. I think we've covered this pretty well, and the Mayor knows my views on meetings. So I'm not going to put the motion, but it's going to be just one piece left. So we'll take the Creative Capital Arts Trust separately. So we'll do everything else apart from number 5, and then we'll vote on that one. So Councillor Brown can vote with this one. I now put the motion and need a seconder. Councillor Foon? Oh, have I done that already? Yes. Oh. We just moved to the vote. Okay. Right. So we can vote. Tim, that's fine. Yep. Right. Well, that's been passed unanimously. So so then we'll do number 3, stroke 5, which is the Creative Capital Arts Trust, 25,000. And Councillor Brown is not voting on this one. I can't vote. What? I suspect it'll get through. Right. Great. So that's carried. So what I suggest we do, as it's now 10:23, I think what we might do is break for coffee, tea now, and then come back for the next one, which will be the living wage, which Councillor Matthews is going to introduce. Is 10 minutes? Or do you want to go till 25 too? Or I'll make a decision. We'll come until 25 to 11. Okay, so we've got just over 10 minutes. Thank you.
I was thinking, yes, we need to go for it.
Yeah, I thought I was about to.
Good.
Don't go down to
Thank you. I'd like to ask Councillor Rebecca Matthews to introduce. Oh, do I? Got it. That's why it's in yellow. So I'd like to introduce the officers Mark Farah, Grace and Andy to the table to introduce the report.
Kia ora, councillors. I'm just going to say a few words just to start us off with the Living Wage for Events Fund. This is effectively the last round of this fund because a fair chunk of the money is tied up in multi-year funding, which the Grants Subcommittee agreed to back in May 2021. So this is the remaining $78,000. There are 13 applications in this funding round. You will see some double up with organisations that have applied through the Arts and Culture Fund. So one of those two that we're not recommending funding for were funded in the last paper for the same application. We've worked through the applications. We've taken a fairly pragmatic approach about the presentation of the numbers in terms of justifying living wage and how that works. As we know, and as Councillor Brown and Councillor Foon mentioned in the last debate, artists will make things happen with funding. So they'll apply for funding, and if they get less funding, the chances are that project will probably go ahead. So we're very mindful when we're looking at all the applications we have to make recommendations that reflect a reasonable level of funding so that people can make a living and pay their rent and survive. It is a tricky one, and this fund has been useful over the last 3 years to be able to enable us to lift pay. We've taken a few different approaches over the years of giving companies a block of funding. So the living wage now, of course, since the 1st of September is $26 an hour. So you'll see some multiples of $26 for some projects. Some, they make a case where they contract their artists and performers or tech staff, and the difference between the budget they've got and the living wage is this much. So, you know, largely in this round, we're recommending spending down all the funding that's available, and there are those projects being recommended. The one that we're not recommending, apart from the one that was already funded, is because we already funded the Creative Capital Arts Trust $50,000 through this fund for the Fringe Festival. It is for a different set of events for that organisation, but just given the limited funding we had, that was the decision we debated as officers and what's in the recommendations here. So we're happy to take any questions. I don't know whether Grace has got anything to add. Kia ora.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Great, well, we'll move into debate. Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Matthews, and Councillor Matthews is going to introduce the paper.
Yes. And first of all, I'd like to thank the team for their mahi on this. I think it's very interesting, the debate that was happened earlier, because I think one of the advantages of this fund and why I think we should look at something similar or, you know, continuing it in some form is because it is a fund explicitly for pay. And I think that, you know, that is something that there is a lot of, there's almost that kind of awkwardness around when you're applying for funding, and that actually something that says explicitly you should be paid a fair wage for the arts and events work you do, I think is really important. And I guess just to note that, you know, that we were that the influence that we've had on central government funding to also who now look at, you know, funding for a living wage. So, just an exciting range of events and different art forms, and also just to, you know, the importance of that multi-year funding as well for those important kind of bigger arts events. So yes, just happy to move.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Foon, seconder. Is there any debate? Perfect. Just what I like. There are no amendments for this. So we would you like right of reply? But unnecessary. So I'll now put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, please vote green. Those against, vote red. Oh, so sorry, I forgot. So because it hasn't got, we're not recommending.
think you can just...
The capital one, we're not recommending funding for this, so...
Oh, yeah, it's your right to vote, yeah.
Yep. Well, you can vote no, I guess. Isn't that fantastic? Another unanimous vote. Okay, thank you. So I declare the motion carried. Right, now we're on to the Climate and Sustainability Fund, which is going to be introduced by the Deputy Mayor, Councillor Laurie Foon. Oh, no, first of all, sorry, read your notes. I'd like to welcome Alison Howard, who's not here, Pip Wheaton and Raven Mader, is that how you said? To introduce the report. Over to you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Pip Wheaton tōku ingoa. This is my first time presenting to you guys, and I just realised that I'm actually kind of nervous, which is nice. I'm really happy to be introducing the Climate and Sustainability Fund to you, and Raven is here, who is leading the fund, and we're both here to answer any questions. This is a culmination of several months of work across the team, and we have a great panel of external and internal reviewers that also help us, and so I just want to acknowledge their mahi as well. Since it's been about a year since you last heard from us, I thought it might be worthwhile giving just a little bit of a reminder as to what the purpose of the fund is. And maybe also it might be helpful if I give just a brief summary of what the major emission sources are in the city, because while climate change is essentially a systems problem that needs everybody to be solving it, this round has focused not just on enabling people so that they feel that they can participate more, it's also about direct emissions reductions. And so just as a reminder, when we think about the emissions for the city, we think about it in two ways. There's both the direct emissions that are caused here, so that's things like transport, at nearly half of our emissions, the energy that we use in our buildings, and waste. Those are the top three for the emissions caused here. But then we also think about the emissions that come from the goods that come into our city, our consumption emissions. And when we look at those, the biggest categories there are construction and food. And so when we look at the applications that we get from the community and from businesses for this fund, we often see that they're addressing the levers that are most accessible to them. So that's why we see so much on transport and so much on food. So this fund is now in its third year, and we get $250,000 per year to disperse. And last year you told us that you wanted to see more of a focus on Maori-led projects and tangible, measurable emissions reductions. And so that's what's been our focus for the past year. We did things like directing comms on the website, updating that so that was explicit, and Raven spent a lot of her time directly sourcing and supporting applications in these areas. There is one application that we wanted to flag, and that was Kai Cycle, who you heard from earlier on today. We wanted to flag the fact that this has previously received funding through the Organics Diversion Fund. And we wanted to just give a little bit of context as to why we were recommending an additional amount and why it was coming from this fund. Firstly, the waste, the Organics Diversion Fund is a once-off seed funding source, and so they couldn't return to that for an additional amount. Secondly, the waste team recommended them to us, so they see it as being a project of priority, and we see the emissions element of their work. I think that's probably all that we have to share with you, but we're happy to answer any questions.
Right, does anyone have any questions? Great. Oh, not great. Almost great. Councillor Foon.
Yeah, thank you for the mahi. Just the AI presentation we had before, just noting officers' feedback on that. I guess we've had sustainability work for businesses through the chamber. What was it about this project that felt different
to why we would or wouldn't support that one in this case.
Yeah, so I think the idea of involving AI in sustainability and in climate change is great. One of the things that we felt was missing from this project specifically was that they hadn't really sized either the market or the emissions that they were thinking that they would reduce. And so if they haven't been able to demonstrate that at this stage in their project, then we can't really evaluate it on that. So we'd be really curious to see how that develops. Unfortunately, the things that they were talking about focusing on in terms of the events were not things that we would necessarily see as being obviously the biggest priority emissions that would need to be reduced by that type of tool. And again, we had conversations with them. You had conversations with them? No, we reviewed the application that was submitted to us, and there was no evidence of that.
No, good. Just wanted a clearer response as they had presented to us today, so that's really useful. One more question. Just the Haere Whakamua project, that's really exciting and very broad, in its scope. So just what advantages do you see a project like that will have? How might we measure it? Like what might be the measuring point? And just I guess I'm pointing toward the trial aspect for communities across Wellington. Like, what's the potential? Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, so Haere Whakamua, I just want to clarify as well that that is a partnership between Ekerua Bicycle, who were umbrellaing the application and did the kind of administrative legwork of putting the application in, but the project will be delivered by the Strathmore Park Community Centres Trust, who spoke here today. So I think part of the reason why it's a bit broad at this stage is was partially a time thing. They were still kind of, as was discussed today, they had a hui around what their aspirations were in this space and the kind of project they wanted to put in, and then Ekerua, like in the rush to the time, to the deadline for the closing, sort of captured that at a high level, but that will be very much developed further in partnership with the community, and that's where that detail, that's why they've kind of left it a little bit necessarily broad, but with very clear focus on two streams of mahi in the kai space, connecting to whenua space, and transport. Access to sustainable transport for that community, both of which they're as you've heard today, there's a lot of energy for that on the ground. And so in terms of opportunities for, I guess, piloting this for other communities in Wellington, we've recently had Kenna Doigan join our team, who will be she's working across the engagement team and the climate change response team, and please jump in at any point here, but on the climate conversations with communities, which is community-led climate action plans. So we see Strathmore Park as a really, this is an awesome opportunity to kind of build that relationship and resource it in this way as well, for them to be able to be one of the communities that we hopefully pilot this with opportunities to scale across Wellington communities. So, yes, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
I'm actually asking a question here on behalf of Sarah Free. This was also the application number 5, and this was, why didn't this funding come out of the climate change fund that the council has established?
Councillor Brown, could you just speak to your microphone, or move it to the other side of your laptop so you can look at the offices?
Why didn't this funding come from the climate change fund rather than from the grants? Was this the right place for this funding to come from? That was the question, I guess. Was there somewhere better? Because hasn't the council established a $20 million fund for climate change?
Remember the behaviour change.
Yeah. It's different? As I say, I was asking the question on behalf of Sarah, so do you have the answer, or shall I ask my colleagues?
to clarify, so the way that I understand that is the behaviour change work and why this isn't being funded operationally through that stream of mahi, but rather the community grant. I mean, Pip, if you want to jump in here, but I would say that they're connected but not the same, because this is a community-led project, and they have identified the things that they want to work on in their community and put this application in to do that, but that we see great relationship building and capacity building opportunities that will support our wider work program with regards to behaviour change. Do you want to add anything?
Thanks. So, Councillor Matthews.
Yes, I just wanted to check in hearing the presentation from the Strathmore community, because I just wanted to check in as our conversation still happening with the Ngai of Crofton Downs, because there is a community-led initiative to become a carbon zero suburb, and I think there's been some mixed kind of experiences, trying to get support from council for that mahi.
Yeah, that's where we're really excited to have Kenna joining the team. She's been having great conversations with them regularly since she joined, so really excited. Would be very happy to give you an update on that.
Yeah, and also so I spoke to them a little bit as well with regards to the fund, and at the particular point that we were talking, they were kind of like in those beginning stages of actually needing the capacity to actually create a project that would be eligible for the fund. So that's where Kenna is going to be supporting, with the aspiration of then hopefully putting an application to this fund.
That's wonderful news, and I'd love an update when the time is right. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So any other questions? No, so a mover for the will be Councillor Matthews. No, sorry, I got it wrong. No, I've got it wrong. It's Deputy Mayor, Councillor Foon, and
You honoured me greatly last night with your text. I was like, yes.
And I've been on Earl Grey tea.
Yeah.
Who would like to second it?
I'll second.
Councillor Matthews.
Kia ora, Councillor Matthews, great.
Is there any debate? Amendments?
I might just have a word. Look, I think I don't need to outline. The team have done a really great job of outlining the purpose of the fund and the I don't want to use the word the priorities and the way that you've looked at it. So thank you for that. And I think there's a really broad spread in this particular funding round, which has been great to see, like the Arocha Aotearoa Eco Church project. So really kind of reaching into different communities and the way that they operate, as well as the travel planning and everything else in there. But probably I think that we would unanimously ask that you take back to the Haere Whakamua project in partnership with Ekeroa Bicycle, that we really appreciated them coming in today. It is just wonderful to hear about the community and how they're connecting, and I think particularly, while I was asking about that broadness, but I really respect that in some cases it's the opportunity for them to create how they see it working, and I can say that in the food space and talking about growing food, it's an area that I was never interested in, but when I saw what joy and connection and knowledge and learning and independence it brings to communities, there was absolutely no doubt in my mind that this is a way to go that has so many benefits. So when you hear me going on and on about Kai projects, that's the reason why. So yeah, just really wonderful to see the Strathmore community converging over this opportunity of foraging and connecting and eating together. So very excited about it, and hope we get an update when they're ready. Kia ora.
So now we have debate. Is that right? Yes. Councillor Matthews, so she's going to speak briefly.
Yes, I just wanted to echo Deputy Mayor Foon's comments, but to particularly, and I hope that the video will be watched by some people in that Strathmore community, but to acknowledge Pauline's contribution today and how impactful it was, and how going through that experience of doing something which might seem quite difficult and intimidating actually is so, you know, on a growth level, but also has an impact on the people who are have the privilege of listening and witnessing that and being part of that. So just wanted to particularly acknowledge Pauline's contribution and say thank you for that, and that I will remember it.
So does anyone else have anything to say? No? Would you like a right of reply, Councillor Foon? You don't have to.
Yeah, I just also want to acknowledge Kai Cycle's work, and that they've persevered, they've had to get round the council traps. You can see that they've been now ended up in the consenting space, trying to get their project underway. And I know you know this, we have a massive problem, but opportunity with organics, and they are trying to find localised solutions. So I just really appreciate your support on this, because the more they can speed it up at a local level, the less it will cost us to transport it around. And quite frankly, if we wanted to turn the east side of Berrinpool Golf Course into a massive garden funded by, with all of the resource coming from organics, we wouldn't have to pay the 18 million to ship it away. So come on team, let's get open-minded and connect the dots there. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. So I will now put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. Those in favour, do the usual, please. Great. So we'll continue the pattern of unanimous support for these things. So we move on to the Natural Environment Fund, and right. So that's it. Oh, it's Daniela. So just like to welcome Mark Farrer again, and Daniela Biago. Is that how I say it, Biago? Biagio. Yeah. Thank you. You can see I don't have any Italian ancestry. So I'd like you to introduce the report. Thank you. So have you got your microphone on?
That's better. So this is the Natural Environment Fund. The fund has $80,000 a year available, and 30,000 of those is locked into a contract with EnviroSchools at the moment. So we had $50,000 available for these applications. Sorry, that cold I had last week is still lingering a little bit. We were oversubscribed by a factor of 3, so about $150,000 were requested for, and the quality of applications were really high in this round. So we've got the recommendations. There's a few, many of the recommendations for no funding are either going to be funded operationally or are applications that need further work in the community or relationship space, or quotes for work, et cetera, updated before they can really progress the project. So we're making recommendations to do some of those things and come back to the fund at a later date. There's nothing to flag from my perspective. There were some questions with regards to ghost fishing. So we put a support for the application, but the original application included a lease, a vehicle lease, which didn't quite fit with our funding priorities. But we did allow for a moderate amount of funding towards fuel and mileage related to the activities, and there were some questions with regards to how this aligned to our climate change aspirations and mode shift. So we've done some good investigation of the vehicle types and the type of use, and really there's no alternatives in the current mode, but they are very conscious of this, obviously, given the work they do. And we are doing also support operationally for when they have the bigger activity days, where we are actually removing the large tons of waste ourselves. but they still have to carry around heavy gear, compressors, diving gear, kayaks, and things like that to site, and really a truck and a trailer are kind of the only available and suitable vehicles in option.
Questions before we move into debate? Councillor Fuden?
Yeah, I'm always impressed with the large amount of absorbing the conservation team manages to do for this fund. So we had a technical term for it yesterday, some kind of integration. But yeah, just how are you going with that? And yeah, I can see that there's a lot going on in here.
Yeah, it's challenging, and I think in the current economic context we're in, it's going to become even more challenging. Our communities expect a lot in terms of how we care for the environment. It is a key priority for the council and the community, and we have a relatively small fund. I know that there's been a request, yes, around increasing the fund.
Should have done it last year.
Does anyone else have any questions? Councillor Brown.
Thanks. I've actually got several questions. First one, Mark, is for you. This is just a sort of a structural question. I noticed that some of the grants, there is a review panel who are named. But
sorry, Tim, could you just
in closer?
Yeah, we'll just bring it with you.
So, is that review structure in place for all of the various things, or just some?
When the Climate and Sustainability Fund was set up, that was one of the proposals we took to Council when they approved that fund. But for all the rest of the funds, that's ratepayer money, we'd be working with specialists within the business units. So Daniela, park rangers, other technical specialists within the Council. But it was felt at the time for the Climate and Sustainability Fund that we needed some external expertise and specialists. I mean, arguably, I think that Alison's team is much bigger now, so we're transitioning a little bit with that fund. That's a 5-year fund, and we're 3 years into it. So in the main, we're using council officers, and then we'd be talking to external people and seeking advice and including that within the recommendations. So that fund is an outlier in terms of external panels.
Thanks, yeah, that helps me understand that. The more specific question is, I mean, there's a lot of the applications were for getting rid of pests, and I think the idea that people in the community would actually go around getting rid of, wattles and other invasive plants or whatever is extremely desirable. So it makes it, I think it's very disappointing that we weren't able to provide them with greater support. So I'd just like to ask you about one in particular. I mean, well, actually two. One is because I remember the Friends of Central Park came in and spoke to us previously and gave an extremely persuasive case that they did a great amount of work on bugger all money, and I see that we have given them quite a lot less than what they've asked for. So I'd like you to explain why they didn't get their full grant. And the other group is the pest wattle tree removal group, and the reason I ask about that is I absolutely hate wattles, and I personally do a lot of chopping down wattles on road reserve near me. Yeah, so I'm just curious as to how they lucked out entirely.
Sorry. One. I love to hear that anybody wants to get rid of pest plants. First and foremost, because they don't get the amount of love and attention that the getting rid of rats gets, and the amount of effort. So it is really great, and we have been working very closely with the communities in the ecosystem weed control and increased support. I know a couple of years ago we had an operational increase to have a little bit of funding for supporting community-led ecosystem weed control, because with the way we have to do our ecosystem weed control is prioritize for the most invasive weeds in the most precious places. That's not often the same place that the community is really keen to take care of. So what that fund has given us an opportunity to do operationally is be able to support some of this. So there are a couple of these that we're having the conversations to see if they fit through that criteria. So we might be able to top up some of them, but we didn't have guarantees on those, and we didn't want to misrepresent the outcome in the situation. So I know that's the case for the wattles that we're looking into that side. There's also some of these have health and safety issues and other issues associated with them because of the steepness of some of the terrain. So we've got to be really cautious about who does the work and what's the suitability of the work in question. One of the things that we had to consider in here is, as much as we want to do a lot more ecosystem weed control, is also what the purpose of the fund is. And so we recognize, for example, we had funding for ghost diving and for mountains to sea. We don't have any operational funding for restoration, protection, or reconnection in the marine space. So that's something that is only being funded through this avenue at this point. So we want to recognize that this is really important. And while statutory boundaries mean that we don't work in that space from a reserve management perspective, the natural values of those are really important, and they support our climate aspirations and others in terms of resilience for the city, et cetera. So this is the only place where those activities can be supported, while the other activities have other avenues of support in terms of ecosystem weed control.
Thanks, Sarah. But I mean, I'll give you a specific example. So once upon a time, the city council used to go around getting rid of old man's beard. And I remember when they sprayed my road reserve by my house, they killed all the trees as well. So then they gave me free trees to replace the ones which they'd killed. But so it clearly was better for me to do it, which I have, been doing assiduously ever since. But when I go down and buy a Roundup, it's super expensive, and obviously I could afford it. So it's, but does the council provide any assistance to people to actually do that sort of work, and outside of the grant space? I mean, I know that you can get free plants from the nursery, but do we provide free poison or tools to get rid of stuff like old man's beard?
We do. We provide tools and cut and paste and training to do that as well, because obviously there's a high health and safety risk to provide those without the appropriate training. So we actually provide workshops and competency sign-off training for communities to do that. And that, I think the number of people interested in that space is growing. So we're trying to reprioritize that, because the more that they can do, then the better it is for all of us. The Almonds Beard, part of that Almonds Beard initiative was because there was funding from regional council, and they pulled that funding years ago. So when they list some species from that regional list and from the regional funding, then that really affects what we can achieve in the city as well.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions? No? So is there a mover for the motion? Councillor O'Neill, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Foon, is there any debate? Oh, yes, sorry, you first. Then debate.
Oh, I was just indicating a little.
Off you go.
Firstly, I'd just like to thank council officers, not just the officers that work on grants, but I know that the urban ecology team and all of our rangers and PSR do a huge amount of work, and it's really clear in this paper the role that council kind of plays to support community and to acknowledge your mahi. I think it's fantastic to see such a great increase in our natural forest regeneration as well as our marine environment. I remember when Ghost Diving came to speak to us last funding round, and they've just managed to grow and are now making a national impact in terms of their advocacy for our marine environments. So, just quickly to acknowledge those two things, and it's an absolute pleasure to move this grant again. I'm a big fan of it, and I'm glad that it's having a really strong impact. Kia ora.
And now Councillor Foon, seconder, do you want to speak?
Hell yeah. Thank you to all of the groups that are putting in the mahi, and to you for your mahi, Daniela. And just Councillor Brown, last term, Councillor O'Neill and I tried to increase the fund, and we were advised to not increase it, which now I'm bitter about because there's no time. It never comes again. So if you would like to see more funding going into this, we had put in another option for another 100k, so hopefully that will be revisited with advice from officers, which will probably be no because of the general state of the situation, but you're more than welcome to support us with it if you like. Kia ora. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill, for your advocacy as well.
So now, is there any debate? Great. So I don't think you need a right of reply if there's no debate. So let's, I'll put the motion, which has been moved and seconded. Right. So now we move to social and, oh, sorry, it's been passed unanimously.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So now we move, is this the last one, social and recreation? Last of the funds. So now we move to social and recreation fund, and I'd just like to welcome David Ensor. Oh, okay. So David's filling in for James. So we've got Mark Farrer again and Yvonne Mackey. Thank you to introduce the report.
Kia ora, councillors. I'd just like to introduce Yvonne Mackey, who's our funding team leader in the funding team, who manages our team of funding advisors. I'd just like to note before we get into this, and Councillor Brown, when he introduces this, will note we had a typo in the paper, so the substantive will be amended because there's a mismatch between what's in that list and what's in the tables. So the Nourish Trust was $0 and not $1,500. Just in terms of introducing the paper, officers are recommending 17 of 28 applications be granted some funding, the total being 124,677. That's about half of the money we've got for the whole year. So obviously we plan to do another 2 funding rounds, which will be more modest and discreet. The majority of this social and recreation fund is tied up in multi-year funding for a range of organisations. There are 48 organisations funded through multi-year funding, community centres, including Strathmore, who you heard from earlier, right through to, gender violence, sexual violence agencies, youth development agencies. So there's quite a list of organisations, and the balance is spent through this fund. So you typically see smaller applications coming through here. There are a few bigger ones in this one. We do publicise, and it's included in the paper, what the priorities are. So we're pointing this fund towards a few key strategies. Children and young people strategy, RCT's food future, etc., and they're listed in the paper. There is provision within this fund to support operational grants for residents and progressive associations, so you'll see a few of those in there with $1,000 against them. Our checks and balances there are about whether they've met the criteria during the course of the year, so you'll see those appear. We're keen to keep running another couple of rounds this year because they do keep coming to us whenever their cycle is, so that's why they're in there. I'm very happy to answer any questions on any of the applications, and Yvonne can help me out. We did answer some questions overnight in the Q&A about some of the applications that you would have received.
So I do have a question just about the Wellington Marine Conservation Trust Board, because I know they're really struggling, partly because the Department of Education has cut their $60,000 grant, which kept them alive. But I'm just wondering, is there anything we can do to help them a little bit more? Because it is an amazing facility. I mean, I went out there recently, and I'd just like you to know I did pay for my ticket. I was offered a freebie, but I declined. I know it's kind of like the old New Zealand. It's a little bit amateurish, but a huge dedication, volunteers who really help. I thought the place was amazing. Is there anything we can do to help them?
Yvonne might add to this, but I mean, our recommendation of $5,000 is consistent with our recent funding for the Marine Conservation Trust. They do hold some funding in their accounts in terms of, and obviously as you'd know, they've got plans and they're reorganising themselves around what their plans are for the future. So largely I think the trust needs to decide what it's going to do and determine what happens to those amounts of money they've got in reserve. The Ministry of Education funding did disappear a couple of years ago, and it's unfortunate, but as Daniela covered off, we did encourage them to apply into the Natural Environment Fund, but of course there's only limited funding there. So we think that this recommendation is consistent with what we've been doing recently for the Trust, and we've reached out and offered to help them identify other funding sources and provide advice to them. Yvonne, I don't know whether you've got anything to add.
I actually spoke to Judy the other day to organise a meeting and to go through some options. Obviously, I said, it's very difficult for Wellington City Council to keep offering or recommending grants. But we're just going to sit down and work out what else there is available around Wellington and look at what they're charging for people to attend, because that could be lifted maybe, but just to have a good conversation with them both.
And presumably also about the kind of how they see the future from succession planning and things like that. Yeah, yeah, that's really good. Thank you. Can you just keep us in the loop about that, because they are, staunch advocates, so it's always good for us to know what's going on. Any other questions? I think Councillor Foon looks like she's about to ask a question.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to understand a little bit about the facility that the Conservation Trust has. So, just without getting into too much detail, but I know that they rent that out and that helps their income. Is that how that model works?
The rent that they pay on the bait house is about $220 a year, and I think the leases run out now with the City Council. Right. But they're just in agreement with each other, and because it's a earthquake-prone property. Right. Okay. And they do actually pay rent for the surf club as well. Yep. And they get some income through that with hiring out those rooms as well.
I guess I would ask if that will that be part of the conversation you'll have with them about how maybe that could be improved? It's a great space, and
And through the chair, I mean, obviously it's part of the community facilities policy review. So in the proposal, within the next 3 to 6 years, all those facilities in Island Bay need to be looked at in the context of that policy. So there's a little bit of work that's happening through our colleagues in PSR on that as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Brown.
This feels like a Ray Chung question rather than a Tim Brown question, because
I'm sure it's going to be shorter than a Ray Chung question.
Anyhow, back in China, no. But,
colleagues, I'm going to pull the deputy mayor card out.
And we have had a chat about the Marine Education Centre previously, and I mean, it is obviously there is a real problem, isn't there? And I mean, the thing is that it's the only way people on land can actually see what's going on below the sea, which is such a shame when you consider how vibrant our marine environment actually is. So I'm not too sure about the future of the Marine Education Trust, as its current form, but I really do hope that we as a council are proactive about engaging to make sure that there is a long-term solution to that, because back in the day, we were major backers. We gave them $1 million for their applications for the Te Rakahau Point facility, which didn't get progress. But so I've been involved with supporting them for a long period of time.
Like Councillor O'Neill is pointing out, this is a question.
Yeah, but it's something which would be such a tragedy if it sort of just gradually dwindled away to nothing, and which seems quite a possible outcome. So I don't quite know how we actually kind of proactively take leadership of that, but I suspect that if we aren't showing some leadership around it, it could come to a messy end.
So, Councillor Brown, which one is your question in that rather Councillor Chung-like statement?
That's right. What do you think of that?
No, I think they've already answered your. I think they answered your question in their introduction. Because they did say they are concerned about the future of it, and they are talking to them, and I think we all share the same concerns for it. So anyway, Councillor Brown, if you think that's a question, I want to talk to you about punctuation marks. Does anyone else have a question? No? Okay. Is there a mover for the motion, Councillor Brown?
Sure. So I move the motion, but obviously it's with an amended substantive, as I understand it, which removes item 14 and point 2. Which is not there, as you can see in the red. So I'm moving this particular motion rather than the one in the written document.
And then, so should I take it that your question that wasn't a question was actually your remarks as the person who's moving the paper, and that you don't want to speak again?
Well, I'm happy to repeat. I'm channeling Ray here. No.
So do I have a seconder? we'll give it to the Deputy Mayor. Well, we could ask the Mayor to second it. Okay, the Mayor is going to second it. Would you like to speak? Right. Is there any debate? Great. So, right of reply? Well, clearly not. Yeah. So I'm going to... I'm going to put the motion press the red button to support, orange button if you're absent. Excellent. That's carried unanimously. And now we go to the forward programme, and I'd like David Ensor to introduce the paper.
Kia ora koutou. Very happy to present the paper. It's very comprehensive. I will take it as read and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Great. Do I? Oh, we have to have a mover for this one too. I suppose we do. Your Worship, would you like to move this? Okay. Would you like to speak? No. Good. And a seconder? I'll give it to Councillor Matthews, because it's such an honour. Is there any debate? Right of reply? And I now put the motion. Okay, that's carried unanimously, and now actions tracking. I'm not going to welcome you again, David.
Thank you.
But very welcome, very welcome. Would you like to introduce it, please?
Very happy to introduce the report and answer any questions that you might have.
Right, there are no questions. Is there a mover for the motion? Councillor Brown. No, I'd like you to pay attention. Would you like to move the paper? Would you like to speak? Great. A seconder? Councillor O'Neill. Thank you. Is there any debate? So, right of reply, and then I'll put the motion.
You're getting right into it.
I think what did it was Councillor Brown channeling our colleague from the Northern Ward.
Western.
Oh, Western. Oh, yeah. Well, it's outside my ward, so. So, Laurie, could I ask you to do the, is it still a karakia? Yes. And is it at both ends? Okay, thank you.
Feel free to join in. Unu here, ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātia, kia mama, te ngākau, te tinana, te tu. Koia rā e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia wātia, ai rā, kua wātia.
I've just seen that it says here that... I'm sorry, it was a bit chaotic because it's just, it's like